Welcome to another episode of Pinsky Law Presents. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about preparing for that surprise PESH or OSHA audit. Now, you'll be sitting around the firehouse or at home someday, and at about 4:45, your phone is going to ring. It's going to be somebody down at the firehouse saying, "Hey, Chief, somebody from PESH and OSHA just left a card. They said that they would be back at 9 o'clock tomorrow, and they've left a number of documents which you need to provide them at 9 a.m. tomorrow." This isn't a horror story. This is actually how PESH works. They want to make sure that you are actually keeping the required documents that you need. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, today's lecture comes from the Fire Department Law and Management Resource Manual. It is a massive topic because this is a massive project that you are not going to solve between 4:45 the night before and 9 a.m. the day it's due. You can find a ton of these policies that you are required to have in the resource manual. You find them between pages 495 and 500, 556 and 569, and 609 to 697. Over 100 pages of policies you need to have. So let me just state, why is PESH important? Now, PESH is the Public Employee Safety and Health Agency of New York State. It's what some people call state OSHA. And OSHA is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration agency, and OSHA is there to protect the employees. Now, PESH, being the New York State version of OSHA, is there to make sure that volunteer firefighters, as well as paid firefighters, the laws apply to both equally, that they are both protected. And PESH and OSHA have come up with safety standards for firefighters. And PESH is going to make sure that the fire department has implemented these safety standards to protect its volunteer and paid firefighters. So the federal government has identified a number of safety issues in the fire service that happened because there were catastrophic deaths or injuries over the years. Sadly, as we know in the fire service, most of our rules, like our life safety code and our fire code, have come out of catastrophic instances of mass deaths that have happened. So we react to that. If your fire department has an incident which causes a death or a serious injury, PESH will be one of the number of agencies that show up to investigate, and they will ask you for these records. And let me be clear, you do not want to be listed in a PESH, OSHA, NIOSH, sheriff's audit or review that said the fire chief or the fire department or the fire district didn't have the required policies, didn't have the required safety training, and as a result, this death or injury could have been prevented. You don't want to be that person. If your department is labeled as having violated a PESH requirement and the violation is linked to a death or injury, you'll never live it down. You will be blamed. Your community may take its sympathy and turn it to anger because you could have prevented it, says OSHA and PESH. So you shouldn't fear an OSHA or PESH audit unless, of course, you're not going to prepare for it. But the time to prepare is now, because when they knock on that door, it's way too late. It takes months of preparation. It takes hundreds of policies. It takes training. It takes skill and knowledge. All things you can get from our book or from hiring an attorney who's well-versed in this area of the law. But you need, at the outset, to have the required policies that you can then put in place and then use them to apply, right, to the training and to the actual involvement of your firefighters into these programs to help prevent the deaths and injuries. So, just to be clear, OSHA applies to New York State. New York State adopted OSHA standards, and the OSHA standard is called the Fire Brigade Standard. These are enforced through PESH, the Public Employee Safety and Health Bureau. These standards, true, were created for industrial fire brigades, not, structural residential, but they do apply. So like it or not, you've got to comply. And I'll be honest, at first when I looked at these decades ago, I was really skeptical. But I'll tell you, if implemented practically, these will prevent deaths and injury. Now, PESH are minimum requirements for safety. This is not our goal. This is not where we want to be, but it's a floor that we have to at least achieve. The requirements are mandatory. So the PESH Act is in the labor law, New York State labor law, Article 2, Section 27-A. You can look them up. The regulations, which really are most important, are found at Volume 12 of the New York Code of Rules and Regulations, Part 800 through Part 830. Again, don't become overwhelmed. We summarize them in the book. Now, NFPA, let's talk about that. We know that NFPA is not mandatory in New York State, except for very, very few instances, such as the bailout law. And NFPA seems to upset a lot of fire departments, saying, oh, we don't have to comply. Well, while that's true, NFPA is a consensus standard that has a lot of really good ideas. Why not try to comply with as much as practically possible? But here's the thing. You're going to find that many of the PESH and OSHA requirements that are in the fire brigade standard are actually from NFPA. They model each other. So when you try to comply with NFPA or PESH, you're actually complying with the other. So why not try to incorporate a lot of the good that NFPA has to offer us into your PESH safety program? So all I want to do right now is just run through a list of all the required policies you need so you can go through and check. This I have gotten from an actual PESH audit where PESH showed up at 4:45, knocked on the door and said, here's what we're going to be back to see and review at 9 a.m. the next morning. Please make sure it's available. So this is the actual list. First, you need the fire brigade organizational statement. What is this? Well, we have another lecture on that, but the organizational statement basically says what services we provide, how the fire department is structured, who's in charge, who's the authority having jurisdiction, and it basically starts to incorporate the risk assessment, which, by the way, is the next document you need. You need your risk assessment. You need a required training policy for firefighters. What training is required for the firefighters? You need your last 3 years of the OSHA 300 injury and illness logs and the last 3 years of the workplace injury illness annual summaries. In other words, you are required to keep a log of every time somebody is injured, even minor injuries. You need your written respiratory protection program, and that would include your fit test records, medical evaluations for interior members, evidence of grade D breathing air, monthly air pack inspection records. You need annual training records regarding all aspects of the respiratory protection program. You need your written bloodborne pathogen exposure control program, including the hepatitis B vaccination records. And let me tell you, when PESH walks around, they're going to check to make sure you have all the required disclosures and posters that you have to tell your members about regarding a bloodborne exposure or other injury. They're going to check, going back a slide, to make sure that you have posted the annual summary of your injuries. They will look to see that everything that's in writing is actually incorporated as it's required to be. Now, the Right to Know program, which is the hazardous communications program, also fully discussed in the book with a full policy for you. This has to be in place, and they're going to check that you've been giving the annual training. They're going to make sure that you have posted the workplace violence prevention policy statement and that you have workplace violence prevention training. They're going to make sure that you've done the written risk assessment for being trapped at elevations, as we call it, bailout or emergency escape, right? The assessments. They're going to make sure that you do bailout training. They're going to make sure that you have a lockout tagout program, which we call energy control. And this is required for the safety of persons at your station, but I'll tell you, it should be part of your annual training for how to respond to industrial emergencies as well. They're going to make sure that you have your personal protective equipment assessment and that you've inspected your gear and that your gear is in good shape as shown by maybe certifications as to testing of the gear. They're going to look at your annual training records for everything I've talked about, right? Your bloodborne pathogen, your right to know, your workplace violence, emergency escape, lockout, tagout, PPE, etc. They are going to ask for the training records. And they're going to ask for your training records and the basic skills that you need to have identified in your training program. They're going to look at those minimum training records for the last 12 months to make sure that your members have been trained in the last 12 months. They're going to make sure that your interior structural firefighters have some quarterly training, though this is not our goal to only have quarterly training, but that training demonstrates that they're capable of performing the essential functions of the job in a safe and competent manner. What does that mean? You need lesson plans. You need skill evaluation sheets. You need drill sheets, not just with signatures, but that show what they were tested on and what they did. You must have a training program which identifies the required functions and skills and have concurrent record keeping, which documents the training and competence of your firefighters. And not just for interior firefighters, operators, scene support, fire police if you have them. All of those skills must be identified for each operational capacity which you offer. Now, facility safety. This is a big one, but it's kind of random in the sense that you're never going to catch everything. PESH can inspect the safety of the facility, and there are a lot of issues they find. Here are some common ones we hear about. They look about the station to see if there are, for example, combustible materials which shouldn't be in certain places, for example, under staircases. They will look for the air quality testing for the air compressor and have you done the required annual, semi-annual, quarterly air testing. They'll look at the electrical panels. Are they labeled properly? Are they covered properly? Is there non-combustible or combustible materials near them? Are there warning signs in proper places? Are minors forbidden from cooking over gas stoves, and is there a sign that says that? Are there electrical cords and outlets which are dangerous, which are tripping hazards, which are electrical hazards? And look, we're a fire department. We shouldn't be having these type of hazards in our own home. Are there slippery floors, dangerous instances of water dripping places? These are all things that PESH will look for. It's a long list. And let me end with this before I tell you where you can go for help. PESH isn't there to hurt you. They will give you a list of fines that will be applicable if you don't correct certain things. But generally speaking, PESH isn't there to hurt you. They're there to help you. They will tell you if you can correct these things quickly and efficiently and to their satisfaction, they will lift the imposed fines or the proposed fines. OSHA, not so much. If OSHA shows up, usually it's because of an accident. But OSHA imposes fines and you're pretty much stuck. Well, right about now, you're probably feeling overwhelmed. You might be feeling, we're not going to survive this. Maybe you're thinking, I don't even want to be chief anymore, or I don't want to be on the board of fire commissioners or board of directors anymore. Don't worry. This is a process that we've done literally hundreds of times. You can do this. You can get through this. I would point you, get an attorney who knows how to work through these very complicated regulations. Buy the book. The book is going to give you all of the policies you need, and you can tailor them using the guidance in the book. If you did nothing more than implemented the policies that we suggest for you in the book, you will be compliant. More importantly, though, you'll be safer. So to end, we want you, PESH wants you, OSHA wants you, to help make your firefighters as safe as they can be so we can reduce and hopefully eliminate the avoidable accidents, the avoidable injuries. There's enough in the fire service that's too dangerous anyway. Let's at least take care of what we can do. Well, that's it for another episode of Pinsky Law Presents. Look forward to seeing you the next time.